Okay, let's talk about the Kefine Delci because it is a very peculiar IEM. It's a very interesting choice to introduce this IEM. Now, for a few reasons. Number one, the $50 to $100 price point is quite competitive and is chock full of multi-driver IEMs these days that are so capable that just a few short years ago it would be unthinkable to have that level of technical capability. But they exist, and it's a great time to be a budget audiophile. In that space, introducing a single dynamic driver IEM is certainly an interesting move. And it's even more peculiar because the same company has already introduced a single driver IEM in approximately this price point, the Keyfine Planar, which I have reviewed before, and it turned out to be a very good single planar magnetic driver IEM. So a single dynamic driver in approximately the same price point is a very curious decision. And here's what makes it more curious, like very peculiar indeed. Keyfine actually reached out to me well before their release date and said, hey, we've got this new IEM coming. And you know what's really good on your channel? You know what really works? The best under $100 shootout kind of video. So how about we send you a copy of the DELC and you do one of those videos? So I thought, first of all, that's presumptuous on two counts. One, telling me what content to make. I know what works on this channel. Not every IEM can be a shootout best under $100 IEM video because maybe the IEM is just not good enough. Lots of stuff just will not make the cut. And what's also presumptuous is they believed the DELC to be good enough to go up against the great, which was interesting to me. The confidence was interesting. So I said, hey, you know what? Thank you for the suggestion. Send it in. We'll see what we do. And then they did send it in much after the release. I wonder why. And I took a look at it. And I told myself I'm only going to compare it with other things if it's worth comparing to. So in this video, I'm going to compare it with everything within $50 to $100 because it's a good one. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to start from $50 and go all the way up to $100 and talk about all the IEMs that I think are worth buying. The ones that I've tried at least, that are actually good for the money. And I'll tell you where I think the Kefine Delci sits and who it's for. So let's start off at the bottom of the price segment, the $50 to $60 segment, where we start off with the Trua Clinical Zero series. Now there are two, the blue and the red. The blue is $50, the red is $55 roughly, and they cater to two different sound signatures. The blue is very Harman 2019 curve. And if you don't know what that is okay. It's just the result of some older research that basically said a lot of people seem to like this kind of sound signature. Now amongst the audiophile community, it seems there are a lot of people who like this and a lot of people who don't like this. The ones who don't like it say it's a little bit thin in the mids, a little bit too shouty, and it's just not, it doesn't sound neutral or balanced to those people. So for those people came the Zero Red, the red version of the same IEM. Now both these IEMs have ergonomic issues. They're large in the ear and they're large in the nozzle width, so it's not for everyone's ears, but both of them give you two different tunings and you can basically choose whichever one you like. Both of them are well tuned, but the one thing I noticed about both the Trua Clinical Zero series IEMs is that they're not known for resolution as such. They're well tuned, they're two different signatures done really well, not great resolution and not great ergonomics, which is where the 7Hz Sonus comes in. Now the Sonus is a hybrid two-driver system. You've got a dynamic driver for the bass and you've got a balanced armature taking care of the mids and the highs. And I can tell you, the bass sounds astonishingly similar to the Trua Clinical Zero Red. Really, really similar. In quality as well as tonal balance, it's very similar for the bass. The mids and the highs though, that balanced armature does wonders in terms of instrument separation and layering and just overall resolution. So the 7Hz Sonus is really quite nice and it's pretty comfortable in the ear as well. Although there's one big issue, one that jumps out immediately when you use it. The balanced armature and the dynamic driver are very clearly different in their, let's call it tonality, or you could call it timbre. It's very subjective words these are, but there's something about the quality of the sound that comes out from the bass versus the mids and the highs that are different. Now, in my opinion, a lot of people don't give enough credit to brain EQ. That's what I call it. Some people call it brain burn it. Basically, the brain is a very powerful tool that helps you get used to certain sound signatures and then just eliminates the inconsistencies, and you can just get on with, as long as it's not too obvious, you can get on with just enjoying your music. And you can do that with the 7Hz Sonus quite successfully. But do you have to? Because Coming up from the 7Hz Sonus is something like the Kefine Planar. No, the Kefine Planar, which is a planar magnetic IEM from the same guys that made the Kefine Delci that we will get to shortly, I promise you. Now the Kefine Planar has a planar magnetic driver on either ear, and it is, I've covered this in its own video before, it doesn't have the inconsistency of the Sonus, it's got the resolution of the mids and the highs on the Sonus, and honestly, it is a very well tuned IEM. It might lack a little bit of energy in certain parts of treble, and it's a little bit vocal forward, so it's a nice flavored IEM if that's what you're going for. The thing that really stood out to me about the Planar was that where the 7Hz Sonus as well as the Trua 0 series lacked in quality of bass, and by that I mean in the actual resolution and detail in the bass, the Planar knocks it out of the park. It is so good, like noticeably a step better, that it's incredible, and it's very comfortable in the ear too. Now the Planar, you might argue, has a little bit of a downside in that it doesn't image all that well. It's not bad by any means, but it could be better. That's okay, because if you step up a little bit more, you get the Hexa. And this is one of those IEMs that comes every once in a while and just resets the game, because the Hexa has its issues, which we'll get to in a second, but the Hexa is phenomenal at resolution, staging, imaging, layering. And yes, I know some of these things in IEMs are just psychoacoustic, but it does it so darn well that it sets the benchmark here. It is very, very detailed. If you want a game, you can game on the Hexa really well. If you want good directional information, if you want to listen to complex passages of music, this multi-driver IEM just does such a better job at it than everything else in its price class that it is the benchmark. However, the Hexa and the Planar have two issues. Actually, the Hexa doesn't have enough mid-bass, and you can't even EQ mid-bass into it necessarily. Well, you can try, but you have very limited success. So in that sense, the Planar is actually better. I think the Planar might be the most suitable IEM for a lot of people over the Hexa, but the Hexa is more just overall capable. Now, I like both IEMs, but you could make the argument that they have certain timbral issues, right? Some people just don't like the balanced armature and planar sound over the dynamic driver sound, and it's a choice. It's purely a matter of taste, in my opinion, and I get it. I really do, because this next IEM that I'm going to talk about is one of my personal favorites, the Olina SE. We interrupt this broadcast to announce the winners of the giveaway. If you don't already know, if you're a member of this channel, you automatically get enrolled into giveaways, so you don't have to do anything, you just have to stay a member. And today we're giving away Simgot EA500 LMs. If you don't like the LM, just ask me and I'll give you the 500 instead. And today's winner is this person at the bottom of the screen. So shout out to you for supporting this channel. And I, by the way, if you remember, get on Discord, because I don't know how to get in touch with you otherwise, and that way I can figure out where to send these IEMs. So yeah, congratulations and thank you for your support, and enjoy your Simgots when you get them. And for the rest of you, get subscribed, but also become a member. Honestly, it's well worth it. The Olina SE. Yes, it's old, it's a bit long in the tooth now, but it still reigns supreme as far as a single dynamic driver performance is concerned. It's warm, it's lush, it's mid-forward, it's still got air and space, and it's just a good dynamic driver IEM with that dynamic driver sound. And then you've got the Simgot EA500 for the people who want a little more treble push overall. In my opinion, the 500 is better than the 500 LM, which came afterwards, and I did a whole video on that, so I'm not going to get into it. But between the EA500 and the Olina, you've got two very interesting signatures. Here's where the Kefine Delci places itself right in between. Now, if for some reason you don't want the planar magnetic IEM or the balanced armature IEMs because of the timbre or something like that, you really like the dynamic driver sound, the Kefine Delci, in my opinion, strikes a very interesting balance with a little flavor of its own. Now, where the Olina SE is a little bit bassy and warm for some people, the Kefine Planar dials back the warmth but keeps the overall bass. So you get a lot of bass, but not so much that it muddies the mids. The bass quality, in my opinion, is really quite good. It's tight and well controlled for a budget dynamic driver, and it doesn't leave you wanting, but it doesn't push things too far either. The mids, here's where it's a little bit controversial, because in my opinion, the mids are a little bit on the relaxed side. They're a little bit recessed. However, the tonality, it's just beautiful. Nice, clear mids, They definitely don't get lost in the mix too much despite being a little bit recessed. They're right there. They sound beautiful. It's just a lovely dynamic driver sound. And the treble, now this I think is the speciality of the Delci, because the treble is just beautifully sculpted. It is emphasized very much in line with something like an Olina, like a 7Hz Sonus, like an EA500, but it's so beautifully and smoothly done that it's just, there's no major irregularities that I can pick out at least. And it gives you this beautiful sense of space and imaging that sometimes honestly feels a little bit exaggerated, but it's really nice. It is more spacious than most Iems sub $100. It resolves reasonably well, and the fact that it's doing all this with a single dynamic driver is fantastic. The fact that it's sub $60 makes it even more fantastic. So, going back to the $50 price point, the Trua Zero Red and the Zero Blue, well, there's ergonomic issues. They're bit large in the ear and they're a bit large nozzle wise. The Kefine Delci, much smaller in the ear, although the nozzle is 6.23 millimeters, still smaller than the Zero series, but still a little bit on the larger side for my taste. Still more comfortable in the ear, definitely more resolving than the Zero. And it's interesting because the Zero Red and Blue are dual dynamic drivers and this is a single dynamic driver and it still seems more resolving. That's awesome. Compared to the Sonus, now the Sonus actually resolves better because of that balanced armature, and it is noticeable, instrument separation and things are noticeably better. However, the Sonus has that inconsistency in timbre between its own dynamic driver and the balanced armature, and the Kefine Delci does not, because it's just one single dynamic driver. It just sounds consistent throughout the frequency range, so if that bothers you, the Delci is an answer at roughly the same price point. Now I want to compare with the Hexa because this one's difficult. The only reason you would pick this, actually there's two reasons you would pick the Delci over the Hexa. Three reasons if you count the price drop, it is cheaper. But the two reasons sonically is, on the one hand, it's got more mid-bass. The Hexa does not. Simple as that. And the other, you just don't like the balanced armature sound. You like a dynamic driver sound, which is a little bit more warm, a little bit less quick of a driver, a little bit more bloom in the bass. All of those things you get with the Delci, you don't get with the Hexa. And finally, with the Olina and the Simgot, it's got a little less warmth than the Olina. It's got just as much sub-bass, but it's got more sub-bass than the EA500. And it still gives you that treble forward presentation to a degree without pushing things too far. But now we've got another question on our hands. How does it compare against the Keyfine Planar? And quite honestly, it really comes down to your preference. I think the Planar is just, it's a faster driver, it resolves better, it separates instruments better, it does not space an image as well as the Delci. But if you tune it similar to the Delci, I think you'll get a lot of the same characteristics. Where the Planar is a little bit more forward sounding overall, you can make it more relaxed sounding with a little bit of EQ, and therefore if you buy the Planar, in my opinion, you kind of get the best of both worlds. The Delci, in my opinion, if you were choosing between the Planar and the Delci, only works for two reasons. Number one, if you really want just a dynamic driver sound overall. And I'm telling you, if you listen to the two of them, there is something to be said for each of these Iems, and I would strongly recommend you try them before you buy them, or buy them and then return one if you've got a good return policy. But also if you're hard stuck at the $60 price point, then the Planar is more expensive, and therefore the Delci gives you a really surprisingly well-resolving, well-separated, well-staged presentation of sound. I think this is a really nice Iem, and I think for all the cockiness that Keyfine showed when they reached out, I think it was justified. This is a good Iem at a very good price, and it does what it does very well. Now, if you want to buy any of these Iems or any other Iem you want, there are affiliate links down below that I would encourage you to buy because I get money from it. Having said that, as you can see, I say good and bad things about everything because that's what a review should be. Speaking of which, subscribe for the next review. I'll see you in that one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste.